Katie Moore had been living on Outpost Meridian for 8 long months. The station floated in the empty space between 2 star systems, far from Earth and far from anything she would call home. She was a lieutenant in the Earth Defense Corps, and her job was simple. She watched the barriers. She made sure nothing went wrong. She wrote reports that nobody ever read. The barriers were thick walls of energy that separated the human side of the station from the alien side. On the other side lived the Vrikari. Katie had seen pictures of them before she arrived, but pictures did not prepare her for the real thing. The Vrikari were huge. The smallest of them stood at least 9 feet tall. Most were closer to 10. They had skin covered in scales that changed color with their moods. They had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle. Their eyes were large and golden, and when they looked at you, it felt like they could see right through you. Katie remembered her first day on the station. Commander Ethan Price had walked her through the human section, pointing out the mess hall, the sleeping quarters, and the observation rooms. Then he had taken her to the main barrier. "Don't touch it," he had said. "Don't try to go through it. And whatever you do, don't make them angry." She had nodded, trying to look brave. But her heart had been beating fast. "They don't understand how fragile we are," the commander continued. "Last month, one of them tried to shake hands with a diplomat. Broke 3 of his fingers without even trying. They think they're being gentle." Katie had looked through the barrier at the massive shapes moving on the other side. She had wondered what it would be like to be that strong, to be that big, to never have to be afraid of anything. Now, 8 months later, she was used to the Vrikari. She saw them every day through the observation windows. She watched them eat their strange meals. She watched them practice their fighting drills. She watched them argue in their deep, rumbling language. But there was one Vrikari she watched more than the others. His name was Cothran. She had learned this from the translation database after weeks of wondering. He was tall even by Vrikari standards, nearly 10 feet exactly. His scales were a deep blue color most of the time, like the ocean back on Earth. He moved differently from the other Vrikari, slower, more careful. Like he was always thinking about where he put his feet. Katie first noticed him during her 3rd month on the station. She had been sitting at her observation post, drinking terrible coffee and filling out her daily report. When she looked up, he was standing at the barrier on the other side, watching her. She had frozen. No Vrikari had ever paid attention to her before. She was just a small human in a gray uniform. Nothing interesting. Nothing important. But Cothran kept watching. After that, he came back every day. Always at the same time. Always to the same spot. He would stand there for exactly 1 hour, and then he would leave. Katie told herself she was not waiting for him. She told herself that she just happened to be at her post at that time. She told herself that it meant nothing. She was lying. On the 4th month, Cothran left something at the barrier. Katie found it after he walked away. It was a small crystal, no bigger than her thumb, that glowed with soft purple light. She picked it up and held it to the window. It was warm in her hand. She knew she should report it. She knew she should give it to the commander. But she didn't. She put it in her pocket and kept it. More gifts came after that. A flower that glowed in the dark. A stone that was perfectly smooth and cool to the touch. A piece of metal twisted into a shape that looked almost like a heart. Sergeant Danny Oshoa was the first to notice. He was Katie's closest friend on the station, a young man with dark hair and a quick smile. He worked the observation post next to hers. "So," he said one day, leaning against her desk, "you and the big blue guy. What's going on there?" Katie felt her face turn red. "Nothing. I don't know what you're talking about." Danny laughed. "Katie, he brings you presents every day. He stares at you like you are the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. And you sit here waiting for him like a girl waiting for her date to show up. It's not like that, Katie said. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. She started studying Vakari culture in her free time. She read everything she could find in the station's database. She learned that the Vakari valued strength above all things. She learned that they lived in strict social groups called castes. She learned that they almost never showed interest in other species, but she also learned about their courtship rituals. When a Vakari wanted to show interest in someone, they brought gifts. Small things at first, then bigger things, then things that were precious and rare. It was a way of showing that they could provide, that they were worthy. Katie looked at the collection of gifts hidden in her footlocker. The crystals, the flowers, the stones. Suddenly, they seemed much more important than before. She started learning their language. It was hard. The sounds were deep and rumbling, difficult for a human throat to make. But she practiced every night, alone in her quarters, trying to shape the words correctly. On the 5th month, she spoke to him. Catherine was standing at his usual spot. Katie walked up to the barrier, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. She pressed the intercom button that connected to the other side. "Velkitsa," she said. Her voice shook. The words meant, "I see you," in Vakari. It was a greeting, a simple thing. Catherine went completely still. His scales, usually that calm deep blue, began to shift. They turned lighter, brighter. They became gold, shimmering and beautiful like sunlight on water. Later, Katie would learn that gold was the color of deep emotion, of surprise and joy, and something that might be called love. But in that moment, all she knew was that she had made the massive alien happy. And that made her happy too. She smiled at him through the barrier. He pressed one of his 4 hands against the glass. She pressed her small, human hand against the same spot on her side. And that was how it started. The days that followed were the happiest Katie had known since leaving Earth. Every morning she woke up with something to look forward to. Every evening she went to bed thinking about what had happened that day. And in between, there was Catherine they could not touch. The barrier made sure of that. They could not even stand in the same room together. But they found ways to be close anyway. Katie learned more Vakari words. She practiced them until her throat hurt, until the sounds came out almost right. Catherine would listen patiently on the other side of the glass, his golden scales glowing whenever she got something correct. He started learning English too. His voice was too deep for most human words. They came out rough and strange, like rocks grinding together. But he tried so hard that Katie found it beautiful anyway. "Kati," he would say, practicing her name. "Kati." "That's right," she would reply, laughing. "Katie." "Kati," he would repeat, and his scales would turn gold again. Danny watched all of this with a mix of concern and amusement. He would shake his head whenever he walked past her observation post. "You know this can't end well," he said one afternoon. They were eating lunch together in the mess hall, a sad meal of processed protein and freeze-dried vegetables. Katie poked at her food. "I know. He's 10 feet tall, Katie. He could crush you by accident. I know. And even if that wasn't a problem, which it is, there's the whole different species thing. Different cultures. Different everything? I know, Danny." Katie put down her fork. "I know all of that. But when I'm with him, none of it matters. When he looks at me, I feel like I'm the only person in the universe. No one has ever made me feel that way before." Danny was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "Just be careful, okay? I don't want to see you get hurt." Katie smiled at him. "I'll be careful." But she was not being careful. She was being reckless, and she knew it. She just didn't care. The gifts kept coming. Catherine brought her things from the Vakari side of the station. Things she had never seen before. a necklace made of tiny shells from his homeworld, a book written in Vrakari symbols that he was teaching her to read, a small statue of a bird-like creature that he said was sacred to his people. In my culture, he told her one day, his English improving every time they spoke. When a warrior gives these things, it means something important. Kay's heart beat faster. What does it mean? Cawthron pressed his hand against the barrier. His scales were gold, but there were hints of deep red in them too. She had learned that red meant fear. He was afraid. It means I choose you, he said, above all others. It means I want to protect you, to provide for you, to stand beside you for all my days. Katie felt tears forming in her eyes. She pressed her own hand against the glass. Cawthron, she whispered, I feel the same way. His scales exploded into the brightest gold she had ever seen. It was like watching a sunrise dot, but happiness, Katie had learned, never lasted forever. The universe had a way of ruining good things. It started with whispers. Katie noticed the other Vrakari watching Cawthron differently. There was suspicion in their golden eyes. Some of them had scales that turned dark green, a color she had learned meant disgust. Cawthron noticed it too. He became more careful about when he came to see her. He looked over his shoulder more often. The confidence in his movements began to fade. What's wrong? Katie asked him one evening. Something is bothering you. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy. I am of the warrior caste, he said. It is the highest honor among my people. Warriors are meant to be strong, to be hard, to feel nothing but duty. Katie nodded. She had read about this in the database. When a warrior shows softness, Cawthron continued, it is seen as weakness. When a warrior shows interest in an outsider, it is seen as betrayal. Katie felt cold fear creeping into her heart. Are you in trouble? Cawthron's scales flickered between blue and green. He was trying to hide his emotions, but she could see the truth anyway. The elders have noticed my behavior, he said. They have asked questions. I have told them nothing, but they are not stupid. They see where I go every day. They see who I look at. What will happen? Katie asked. I do not know. Maybe nothing. Maybe they will decide it is not important. He paused. But if they decide it is important, they will make me stop. By force, if necessary. Katie's hands were shaking. Cawthron, if you're in danger, you need to stop coming here. I don't want anything bad to happen to you because of me. His response was immediate. His scales turned deep red, the color of strong emotion. No, he said. His voice was firm. I will not stop. You are worth any punishment they can give me. You are worth everything. But Cawthron, listen to me, Katie. He pressed both of his right hands against the barrier. In my whole life, I have never felt what I feel when I am with you. I have been strong. I have been brave. I have fought in battles and won glory for my people. But none of that made me happy. You make me happy. I will not give that up. I will not give you up. Not for them. Not for anyone. Katie was crying now. She didn't try to stop the tears. I love you, she said. It was the first time she had said those words to anyone. I know it's crazy. I know it doesn't make sense. But I love you, Cawthron. His scales turned gold again. Pure, brilliant gold. I love you too, Katie, he said. In my language, we say Velkathra. It means the fire that burns in my heart is for you alone. They stayed there for a long time, hands pressed against the glass that separated them. Two beings from different worlds, different species, different everything. But in that moment, none of that mattered. In that moment, they were just two people in love. And somewhere on the Vrakari side of the station, the elders were watching. They were making plans. They were preparing to do whatever it took to end this shameful display. The storm was coming. Katie and Catherine just didn't know it yet. 3 days passed. Catherine did not come to the barrier. Katie waited at her post every day, watching the other side of the glass. She saw other Vrikari moving around. She saw them eating, talking, going about their business. But she did not see Koth's single quotes Ren. On the first day. She told herself he was busy. Warriors had duties. He would come tomorrow. On the second day, she started to worry. She tried to send him a message through the translation system, but there was no response. The system showed that he had received it, but he did not reply. On the third day, she was sick with fear. Danny found her sitting alone in the observation room, staring at the empty space where Catherine usually stood. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay?" Katie shook her head. "Something is wrong. I can feel it." Danny sat down next to her. "Maybe he just needs some time. You said the elders were suspicious. Maybe he's trying to let things cool down." "No." Katie's voice was certain. "He wouldn't just disappear like this. Not without telling me. Not without saying something." She was right. Later that evening, she finally saw him. But it was not the way she expected. Catherine was being led into the large chamber on the Vrikari side. His arms were bound behind his back with thick metal chains. His scales were a dull gray color, the color of shame and defeat. He walked with his head down. Behind him came 3 Vrikari elders. They were old, their scales faded with age, but they moved with power and authority. Each of them wore ceremonial robes marked with symbols of justice and law. Katie pressed herself against the glass. "Catherine!" She shouted, but he couldn't hear her. The barrier blocked sound unless the intercom was turned on. She reached for the intercom button, but stopped. If she called out to him now, in front of the elders, it would only make things worse. So she watched. And what she saw broke her heart. The eldest of the 3 Vrikari stepped forward. He spoke in the rumbling Vrikari language, his voice filled with anger. Katie couldn't understand all of it, but she caught some words. Betrayal, weakness, shame. Catherine said nothing. He just stood there, his head bowed, taking every insult. Another elder stepped forward and struck him across the face. The blow was so hard that Catherine stumbled. Katie could see silver blood dripping from his mouth. She put her hand over her mouth to stop herself from screaming. The third elder spoke next. This one seemed calmer than the others, but his words were just as cruel. He talked about tradition, about duty, about how warriors were supposed to be examples for their people, not sources of shame. Then he said something that made Katie's blood run cold. She didn't understand the Vrikari words, but she understood the gesture. The elder pointed at the barrier, at her section of the station. At her, Catherine's head snapped up. For the first time, his scales showed color again. They turned bright red. Fear, but also something else. Something that looked like anger. He spoke. His voice was loud enough that Katie could hear it through the glass, even without the intercom. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. He was arguing, defending, fighting back. The first elder struck him again. This time, Catherine fell to his knees. Katie couldn't take it anymore. She slammed her palm against the glass as hard as she could. The sound wasn't loud, but it was enough. Every Vrikari in the chamber turned to look at her. Time seemed to freeze. Katie stood there with her hand pressed against the barrier, staring at the 3 elders who had hurt Catherine. She was just a small human, 5 feet 4 inches tall, soft skin and fragile bones. Nothing compared to these giants. But she didn't look away. The first elder said something in a mocking tone. The other 2 laughed. One of them made a gesture that was clearly meant to be insulting. Catherine struggled to his feet. His scales were flashing between red and gold. He was saying something to the elders, his voice rising. He was pointing at Katie, but not in accusation. In protection. In defense, thought the elders didn't like that. The second elder pulled out a weapon. It was an energy lance, a long staff that glowed with deadly light. He pointed it at Cothran's chest and spoke in a low, threatening voice. Katie's heart stopped. They were going to kill him. They were going to kill him right in front of her, and there was nothing she could do. She hit the intercom button. Stop! She screamed. Her voice echoed through both sides of the station. Please, stop. Don't hurt him. The elders turned to look at her again. This time, there was something different in their eyes. Interest, curiosity, and something darker. The first elder walked toward the barrier. He was so tall that his head almost touched the ceiling. He looked down at Katie like she was an insect. He spoke, and the translation system picked up his words. So you are the creature that has corrupted our warrior. Katie's hands were shaking, but she stood her ground. I haven't corrupted anyone. Cothran is a good person. He doesn't deserve to be treated like this. The elder laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. Person? He is Vrekari. You are human. You are nothing. A small, weak, pathetic thing. And you have brought shame to one of our greatest warriors. The only shame here is yours, Katie said. She didn't know where the courage came from. You're punishing him for caring about someone, for feeling something real. What kind of people punish others for love? The elder's scales turned dark green. Disgust. Love? You think a Vrekari could love something like you? You have tricked him, confused him, used your human weakness to make him soft. That's not true. It does not matter what is true. The elder turned back to Cothran. What matters is what we do now. He raised his hand. The other elder lifted the energy lance, pointing it at the barrier. At Katie. First we will remove the corruption, the elder said. Then we will deal with the warrior. Katie realized what was about to happen. They were going to kill her. They were going to blast through the barrier and kill her. And then they would kill Cothran. She should have run. Any smart person would have run. But Katie didn't run. She stood her ground and stared at the elder. If you hurt me, you'll start a war. Humanity will not forgive you. The elder smiled. It was a terrible thing to see on that alien face. Humanity? Your species is nothing. We could destroy you in a day if we wanted to. From behind him, still in chains, Cothran spoke. His voice was calm now. Deadly calm. No, he said. You could not. The elder turned. What did you say? I said you could not destroy them. Cothran's scales were changing again. Not gold, not red. They were turning white. Katie didn't know what white meant. She had never seen it before. You think you know humans, Cothran continued. You think they are weak because they are small, because they break easily. But you are wrong. I have watched them. I have learned from them. And I know something you do not. The elder took a step toward him. And what is that? Cothran raised his head. His golden eyes found Katie through the barrier. They do not give up, he said. No matter what happens. No matter how much it hurts. They keep fighting. They keep hoping. They keep loving. And that makes them stronger than we will ever be. The elder raised his hand to strike Cothran again. But this time, Cothran was ready. Everything happened at once. Cothran moved faster than Katie had ever seen him move. Despite the chains on his arms, he ducked under the elder's blow and threw himself sideways. His shoulder hit the second elder, the one with the energy lance, and sent the weapon flying across the room. The third elder shouted something and reached for his own weapon. But Cothran was already spinning, using his bound arms as a club. He caught the third elder in the chest and knocked him backward. For a moment, it looked like Cothran might actually win. He was a warrior, after all, the best of his generation. Even in chains, he was dangerous, but there were 3 of them and only 1 of him. The first elder recovered quickly and grabbed Cothran from behind. The second elder picked up the energy lance. Fool! The first elder roared. You throw away everything for a human? For this pathetic creature? Cothran struggled against the grip holding him. She is not pathetic. She is brave and kind and good. She is better than any of you will ever be. The elder's scales turned black. Rage. Pure, terrible rage. Then you can die together, he said. He turned and pointed at the barrier. At Katie, the second elder raised the energy lance and fired. Katie had no time to run. The blast hit the barrier directly in front of her. The energy field flickered and sparked, but it held. The barriers were designed to withstand exactly this kind of attack. The elder fired again. And again. Each blast made the barrier flicker more. Small cracks began to appear in the energy field. On the human side of the station, alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. A computer voice announced, "Barrier breach detected. All personnel evacuate immediately." Katie should have listened. She should have run to safety like everyone else on the station was doing. She could hear footsteps behind her as her colleagues fled for the emergency shelters. But she couldn't leave. Not while Cothran was still in danger. Through the weakening barrier, she saw Cothran watching her. His scales were still white, that strange color she didn't understand. But his eyes were golden and warm. "Run," he mouthed. "Please run." She shook her head. The elder fired again. This time, a piece of the barrier shattered completely. A hole appeared, about the size of a basketball. Energy sparked and crackled around its edges. "One more shot," the elder said with satisfaction. "And then we will finish both problems at once." He raised the lance to fire the final blast. That was when Cothran broke free. Later, Katie would learn that Vrikari warriors had a special ability. When they were in extreme danger, when they faced death itself, they could tap into a reserve of strength that normal Vrikari could not reach. It was called the Velmak, the final fire dot. It was supposed to be used as a last defense, a way to protect others at the cost of everything else. Cothran used it now. His scales turned from white to blazing gold. He roared, and the sound shook the walls of the chamber. The chains on his arms snapped like they were made of paper. He threw off the elder holding him and charged. Across the room, not toward the elder with the lance, toward the barrier. Katie screamed his name, but it was too late. Cothran hit the barrier at full speed. The impact was incredible. The entire station shook. Sparks flew everywhere, so bright that Katie had to shield her eyes. But the barrier held. Cothran fell back, his scales smoking. Silver blood poured from cuts on his arms and chest. Any normal being would have been finished, but Cothran was not normal. And he was not finished. He got up. He charged again. The second impact was even worse than the first. The cracks in the barrier spread. The hole grew larger. More alarms screamed warnings. Cothran fell again. This time, he didn't get up immediately. Katie could see him struggling, trying to find the strength to stand. The elder with the lance laughed. Pathetic. All that effort, and for what? The barrier still stands. You will die here, and so will your human pet. He pointed the lance at Cothran's back. No. Katie screamed. She didn't know what to do. She was just a small human. She had no weapons. She had no power. She had nothing, but she had her voice. "Cothran?" She shouted. "Get up. You have to get up, please." On the other side of the barrier, Cothran heard her. His head lifted. His golden eyes found hers through the smoke and sparks. "I can't," he said. His voice was weak. I can't do it. Yes, you can. Katie pressed herself against the glass. You told me that humans don't give up. Well, neither do you. You're stronger than this. You're stronger than them. Get up, Catherine. Get up and fight. Something changed in his eyes. The weakness faded. The doubt disappeared. All that was left was fire. Catherine rose. His scales blazed so bright that Katie had to look away. He turned to face the elder with the lance. The elder, for the first time, looked afraid. You want to kill her? Catherine's voice was thunder. Then you will have to go through me. He charged the barrier one final time. The impact was beyond anything the station had ever experienced. The remaining energy field shattered like glass. Catherine came through it in a wave of golden light and broken machinery. He stumbled and fell, landing on the human side of the barrier at Katie's feet behind him. Where the barrier had been, there was now a gaping hole. Smoke poured through it. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. The alarms were deafening and through the hole, Katie could see the three elders. They were staring at Catherine in shock. No one had ever broken through a containment barrier before. It was supposed to be impossible. Catherine tried to stand. He made it to his hands and knees before collapsing again. His scales had faded to a dull gray. His body was covered in burns and cuts. Silver blood pooled on the floor beneath him. He was dying. Katie dropped to her knees beside him. She didn't care about the elders. She didn't care about the broken barrier or the screaming alarms or anything else. All she cared about was the massive alien bleeding out in front of her. Catherine, she said, tears streaming down her face. Why did you do that? Why? He looked up at her. Even now, even with death so close, his eyes were warm. Because, he said, his voice barely a whisper, I love you. Through the broken barrier, Katie could hear the elders talking. They had recovered from their shock. They were preparing to come through. To finish what they had started, Katie looked at Catherine. She looked at the hole in the barrier. She looked at the elders approaching with their weapons ready, and something changed inside her. She was afraid. Of course she was afraid. She was a small human facing three giant aliens who wanted to kill her. Only a fool wouldn't be afraid. But fear, she realized, didn't have to mean weakness. Fear could be fuel. Fear could make you stronger. She stood up. Her legs were shaking. Her hands were trembling. But she stood up anyway, and she stepped between Catherine and the elders. The elders stopped at the edge of the broken barrier. They stared at Katie like she was insane. And maybe she was. Maybe standing between a dying alien and three giant warriors with weapons was the craziest thing anyone had ever done. But Katie didn't care about crazy anymore. Move aside. Human, the first elder said. His voice came through clear now that the barrier was gone. This does not concern you. Katie's voice was steady. She didn't know how. It concerns me more than anything has ever concerned me in my life. The elder took a step forward. He was so tall that Katie had to crane her neck to look at his face. His scales were still black with rage. You are nothing, he said. A small, fragile creature. I could kill you with one hand. Maybe, Katie said. But you'll have to do it. Because I'm not moving. The second elder laughed. She has courage. I will give her that. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. Courage means nothing without strength, the first elder said. He reached for Katie, his massive hand opening to grab her. A voice came from behind him. If you touch her, you'll start a war you cannot win. Everyone turned. Commander Ethan Price stood at the entrance to the chamber, flanked by a full security team. They were all wearing combat armor and carrying heavy weapons. Not the small sidearms that humans usually carried. These were the big guns. The ones designed to fight enemies much larger than themselves. And behind the security team stood Danny Oshoa, His face pale but determined. The commander stepped forward. His voice was calm and professional, but there was steel underneath. Outpost Meridian is neutral territory, he said. The attack on this barrier was an act of war. The attempted murder of Lieutenant Moore would be another. And the death of the Rakari Cothran on human soil at your hands would be a third. The first elder's scales flickered. This is an internal Rakari matter. The warrior broke our laws. It broke through the barrier into our territory, Commander Price replied. That makes him our responsibility now. Under Section 7 of the Neutral Zone Treaty, any being who crosses into human space seeking protection is entitled to asylum proceedings. You would grant asylum to a traitor? I would grant asylum to anyone who comes to us for help. The commander's voice was hard. That's what humans do. The elder looked from the commander to the security team to Katie, still standing over Cothran's body. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the third elder, the one who had spoken least, stepped forward. His scales were not black like the others. They were a calm gray. Perhaps, he said slowly, we have been too hasty. The first elder turned on him. What? The warrior broke through a containment barrier with his bare hands. No Rakari has ever done such a thing. It should have been impossible. The third elder looked at Cothran with something that might have been respect. Perhaps there is value in what made him strong enough to do this. Value? In weakness? In loving a human? Is it weakness? The third elder gestured at Katie. Look at her. She is small. She is fragile. Soros is fragile. She knows she cannot win against us. But she stands anyway. She protects someone she loves, even though it may cost her life. He paused. Is that not exactly what we teach our warriors to do? The first elder was silent. The Rakari have always valued strength, the third elder continued. But perhaps we have been too narrow in our definition. Perhaps there are kinds of strength we have not understood. He looked at Katie. The humans have a word for what she is doing. They call it courage. We have our own word for it. Velkith. The small fire that does not die. Katie remembered Cothran using that word. The fire that burns in my heart is for you alone. Velkith Ra. The third elder bowed his head slightly to Katie. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. We will leave, he said. There will be no war today, but there will be discussions. Many discussions. About barriers. About laws. About what it means to be strong. He turned and walked back toward the Rakari side of the station. After a moment, the second elder followed. The first elder remained. His scales were still dark, but some of the rage had faded. This is not over, he said to Katie. You have made powerful enemies today. Katie looked him in the eye. I've also made powerful friends, and I know which ones I'd rather have. The elder's scales flickered. Something that might have been surprise, or respect, or both. Then he turned and walked away. Katie's legs gave out. She dropped to her knees beside Cothran, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. The commander was shouting orders. Medical teams were running toward them. Danny was kneeling beside her, asking if she was okay. But all Katie could see was Cothran. His eyes were closed. His scales were dull. For one terrible moment, she thought he was dead. Then she saw his chest move. Just a little. Just enough. Medical team. She screamed. Someone help him. The next few hours were a blur. Katie stayed with Cothran as they rushed him to the human medical bay. The doctors had never treated a Rakari before. They had to guess at most things. But they worked through the night, doing everything they could to save him. Katie sat beside his bed the whole time. She held his massive hand in both of hers. She talked to him even though he couldn't hear her. She told him about Earth, about her childhood, about the first time she saw his face through the barrier, and felt something change inside her. She told him she loved him. Again and again. In English and in Vakari. In every language she knew. It was almost dawn when Cawthron opened his eyes. His scales were still dull, but there was color returning. Hints of blue. Touches of gold. He saw Katie. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. She grabbed a cup of water and helped him drink. His hands were shaking. Hers were too. When he could finally speak, he said just one word. "Stay." Katie laughed. She was crying at the same time, tears streaming down her face, but she laughed. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Ever. His scales turned gold. Not as bright as before, but growing stronger by the minute. "I broke the barrier," he said. "I broke it for you. I know. The elders were wrong." His voice was getting stronger. "Humans are not weak. You are not weak." Katie squeezed his hand. "Neither are you." In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The barrier was rebuilt, but new rules were put in place. Vakari and humans could now request meetings without separation. A committee was formed to study relationships between species. Cawthron was officially granted asylum and allowed to remain on the human side of the station. The first elder never apologized. But the third elder sent Katie a gift through official channels. It was a small crystal, much like the first one Cawthron had given her. It came with a note, "For the small fire that does not die." Katie put it on her desk next to all the other gifts Cawthron had given her. Danny visited them every day. He still thought Katie was crazy. He said so often. But he also admitted that he had never seen her happier. "So what happens now?" he asked one afternoon. He was sitting in Katie's quarters, watching Cawthron carefully navigate the human-sized furniture. Katie looked at the massive alien, who had broken through an impossible barrier just to be with her. She looked at his scales, now a healthy blue with flashes of gold whenever he looked her way. "Now," she said, "we figure it out. One day at a time, together." Cawthron reached out and took her hand. His grip was gentle, so gentle, even though he could have crushed her bones without trying. "Together," he agreed. "Velkith Ra. The fire that burns in my heart is for you alone." Katie smiled. She had been 1,000 light years from home, stuck on a lonely station in the middle of nowhere, watching barriers that nobody cared about. She had been bored and tired and ready to give up. And then a 10-foot alien had tried to flirt with her. Humanity had always been good at the impossible, at surviving when they shouldn't, at winning when they couldn't, at loving when love made no sense at all. But maybe that was the real strength. Not muscles or weapons or size. Just the simple, stubborn refusal to quit, to give up, to accept that some things were too hard. Humans called it many things. Determination, courage, stubbornness. The Vakari had a better word for it. VEL single quotes. KETH. The small fire that does not die.